This episode is brought to you by the Pelora Group.
Welcome back to Winning Through Culture.
I'm Tim Flanagan.
And I'm Amanda Kramer.
When culture's not a priority, people aren't a priority. Having an intentional focus helps you as a leader remain impactful and relevant as you move your business forward.
Welcome to Winning Through Culture. Well, welcome back to another episode of Winning Through Culture. I am really, really excited for today's conversation. As those who have been listening along with us, we are continuing our how-to series, really grounded in the content that Tim and I both were able to take part in at the Purpose Summit earlier this year. This next guest is somebody that really moved me from the stage. I've already used some of the commentary that she shared in some of our previous episodes, and I'm just really excited to dive into it. So we have Dr. Beth Kaplan. She is the author of Braving the Workplace, and she is a leading expert in belonging, which is a topic we discuss quite often on here, how leaders can lean into the sense of belonging and really what does that mean, as well as she is an expert in leadership development. So she kind of takes the research component, resilience, and puts that all into real world application as to help people and organizations thrive in the seats that they're sitting in and the functions that they're supporting inside of an organization. So in addition to her groundbreaking work in the belonging category, she is also a trusted resource for companies like Salesforce and Georgetown and the Carnegie Foundation and so many that I can list. So you're about to hear, I think, a really powerful insight story around connection and what it really means to build a winning culture and where workplaces can thrive when people truly feel like they belong and that they have a sense of purpose in everything that they do. So, Beth, thank you for being with us. Tim and I are really looking forward to the conversation.
Me too. Thanks so much for having me.
Well, I know you and I have had a conversation previously and had time to connect at the Purpose Summit. And I think a good place to start is really, you've talked about the fact that there are cultures and companies that work on creating safe spaces, and they're different than brave spaces.
Yes.
So can you elaborate a little bit about what you mean when you talk about where companies and leaders are really focusing on creating brave spaces for those that are part of their organizations?
That's a fantastic question. I've never been asked that yet. I would say that a brave space is where truth is told with care.
Yeah.
It's where vulnerability meets accountability. In a brave space, we don't just make room for honesty, we live it. We invite it in. That means being beyond comfort to courage, right? You can't have one without the other. And safe spaces are you are okay. Brave spaces ask, are you ready to grow with us? It's very different. In fact, it takes a lot of recognition from leaders that they have to drop the armor. They need to really drop the protection for themselves and start protecting beyond the business to the people that make the business.
Yeah. A good point, and we were having this dialogue, is where a lot of people will take the title or the label or the role and they kind of hide behind that a little bit in a way. And I think in a brave space, you really do kind of strip that away and you're just human. And you have that vulnerability and you create that space where people come as they are and have the flexibility to say, hey, today I am X. Now, tomorrow I might be Y, and that's okay. But you're having that conversation and you're inviting that dialogue versus saying, I'm the XYZ, whatever title I am. And so I have to put on this brave face all the time, or I have to have the answer, or what that might look like.
Yeah, I would say the courage and the bravery for employees and the modern day worker is being themselves every day in a world that tells them to be something else. And you have a lot of companies, I would say post-COVID, that started to rely on resilience messaging, right? Or started to rely on poster board programs. And here's the thing, we don't need more poster board programs. We need people to put their values up and live them. We're asking people to do things like do more with less. If you're celebrating that as the win, you're unintentionally building a culture of depletion. You're not building a culture for bravery, and you're certainly not building one for success.
So do you think a good question, like for leaders or entrepreneurs that are listening to this kind of in that space, a good question for them to ask themselves would be like, do people feel safer agreeing with me or being honest with me or what? Because this is kind of like a how-to guide too. So like if someone's really like, no, I am really trying to build a brave space, more so than just a safe space. Like what would be that question you would be like, if I'm a leader, I should be asking myself X to kind of give it a measurement and then have a direction of where to go with it.
There's a few different things I could recommend in there. So if you're a leader out there listening, I would do one thing that feels really super uncomfortable, because we've all in leadership training have really been taught how to toe the line, how to be a company spokesman, right? How to be the corporate cheerleader. I want you to ask yourselves out there, do people know if I care about them? That's the first thing I'd ask. Because here's the thing, the number one thing that employees want from their managers is not career growth, it's care. It's not even truth. The first thing that people ask me all the time is it truth? Is that the number one thing? No, it's care. And care has a really large spectrum. So if you're out there and you're like, oh, Dr. Beth Kaplan's always in her feelings, not the case. Because the thing is, it is about that spectrum. Care can mean thoughtfulness. It can also mean candor. It can also mean speaking my name in a room that I'm not in for opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I, in fact, think the most caring thing we do as leaders is set expectations. And then we meet people where they are at. So I'm going to add to that one. I'd ask if people know I care about them and if I meet my employees where they're at.
Well, and you had shared with me when we were just having a personal dialogue around, sometimes you find yourself, you're in that room, you're at the board table, whatever it is, right? You find yourself in that space and you have an opportunity to advocate for someone who's not there. Yes. And I think that is so very powerful.
Huge.
Yeah.
Huge. It's huge. And it's also truth defining.
Yeah.
I think we're at a spot right now where unfortunately the truth can become often debatable, where people are not sure what to trust. So I love nothing more than telling someone I'm going to do something and doing it. And by the way, that's reciprocated. Most people feel exactly the same as I do.
Tim, you're going to say something?
Yeah, I was curious. Well, I mean, on that point you just said, Dr. Beth, that is, honoring your word, I think, is so critically important. And at one level, seemingly simple, and another level, seemingly difficult for people to do. I am curious back to the safety over bravery. I guess there's an intersection of those two, but I would also say the other side of that is safety could be construed as, don't do anything that's going to upset the apple cart. When you hear that term, because I think I may be improperly attributing this, so I will put a disclaimer on that, but I do believe that Google did a study that, said psychological safety at work was one of the main characteristics of a high-functioning team. Mm-hmm. You unpack, what I'll say is healthy safety and maybe an unhealthy definition of that.
Of psychological safety?
Yeah, in the workplace. Because again, I think if one could construe safety as don't upset the apple cart, make sure everybody's okay and everything's nice and placid and peaceful. The other way
Stability.
But the other way to say, psychological safety is what you said, bravery around courage, and everybody has the courage to step into what needs to be done and do it in a caring way.
Well, there's a few different ways to look at it. Psychological safety is speaking up without fear of retribution and being able to be yourself. So by definition, it would contradict what you're saying, but by logic, it completely fits into what you said. I've certainly been there many times where I'm nervous to speak up because it's going to cause my own downfall somehow, right? If I could stop doing it, I would. Trust me. It's just not how it is, because the thing is, it always comes out in the end. Hiding parts of yourselves or covering only lasts for so long, and it hurts us. It hurts us deeply on a mental, a physiological, a psychological level. So that is what we like to call sacrificial belonging, where we're giving up parts of ourselves, consciously or subconsciously, for the betterment of something else. And spoiler alert, it never works out. It just doesn't, because the sacrifice is not noble necessarily. There are very few of us have jobs where sacrifice is required. Now, whether or not we choose to or not, very different thing. Psychological safety, and you asked a little bit about the intersections. I would say that what they all have in common is vulnerability. You can't have bravery or courage without vulnerability. That's the truth. So whether or not you make it safe for your employees also means you have to model it. Sometimes, when you said, sometimes we back ourselves in a corner, or sometimes the truth is harder than you'd think it is, immediately I thought about the fact that I am truthful to a problem at times as a leader. Because I may say, Amanda, I promise you, I'm going to bring up this conversation and I'm going to make inroads to get you promoted. So Amanda probably thinks, can't wait till my next conversation with Beth, I'm getting promoted. That may not be the outcome. I may have a conversation where I'm speaking truth and I'm advocating for you and I just can't get it done. Or it's not meant to be for a real logical reason that my boss may tell me. So going back to Amanda and telling her the truth as a leader in that position, I'm sure we can all agree would be very hard because you feel bad. You're letting her down.
Mm-hmm.
But that truth is incredibly important because candor is care. That's it. So telling Amanda, I tried really hard. This is the opposition that I faced. These are the objections. And this is how I want to help you get through it. Or you digest it and come back to with me of how we can get through it are ways that make me vulnerable, give me the courage, and then makes us all feel like we're more psychologically safe.
I wanted you to kind of bring those two together because I think the question was, I think sometimes it's misconstrued as to what that actually means.
Yeah, agreed.
So you articulated it very well. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Well, and that kind of leads me to a statistic that you shared, right? So let's just say back in 2020, so like COVID time and what have you, 47% of individuals or employees felt like someone truly cared about them at work.
Yeah.
Compared to, let's just say today, that number is lower. It's like 39%. So what do you think has contributed to that sense of belonging and that sense of knowing that somebody, or at least an employee, would state on a survey or, whether that's internal or third party or whatever, that they truly feel like somebody cares for them? What has changed? What's shifted, do you feel? Or no?
My hot take on that is the fact that during COVID, we all were in the same bucket. Everyone had to stay home. Everyone had to do different things. I was a remote employee. So you can imagine it wasn't that different for me in the sense of having to be on Zooms or show my face on camera.
Yeah.
But everyone was in the same boat. And it was hopeful feeling, especially with all of the programs around equality. It's one of those things where excuses, no matter what and how valid are, they're never a good look. Well, this is the same thing in the workplace. The amount of programs sounded so beautiful. But I'm going to be truthful. I don't know one company that rolled out a program that had reflection points, that had more than refrigerator signups. And so there was a disconnect. There's a misalignment that came out. There was, this is what we say our values are. This is what we lived. And then there's all the people in between that don't see that connection. So I think there was a misalignment that took place. And then what happens is people become too nervous to speak up. And then perhaps the biggest trauma in the workplace that's not talked about, belonging uncertainty sets in.
Yeah.
And that is really what leads, employees to think to themselves, do I really belong here? I don't know where I stand. I don't know what people think about me. I know what the company does, what I think of the company. So that was a big shift that I'm not sure the workplace has really addressed. Here's the thing. Pre-COVID, I think we'd all agree that most companies would say, this is our vision, get on board. Post-COVID, most employees will say, this is my vision. I want a company that lives up to my values.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think we've quite reconciled that yet.
Yeah. How do you see performance being impacted by those changes? So I know we talked about the belonging uncertainty, do I still have a place here? Is this the right fit for me? All those questions that someone might be asking. Yeah. How does that lead to, the individual that, said, I am on board for growth. I am on board to sit in a brave space. But then now, fast forward 5, 6, 7 years and it's okay. Are they going back to that? Are they still performing at that same level? Did that give them that boost for only a short period of time? So how do you think that's really driven the performance we've seen?
So I have to just do it anecdotally because I haven't seen a lot of data on it. Here's the thing. When people don't know where they stand, they brace themselves instead of breathing, right? They brace. That's a pensiveness. They protect instead of participate. It shows up in performance. Your cognitive load increases. Your ability to make decisions decreases. Your emotional regulation, it's fragile at best. So I would say that it leads to lower performance when you're not certain about what your job is, where you stand, and what your future looks at. It's a lot more anxiety ridden. So for me, I would say that performance is likely to go down unless you are part of a wonderful company that said their values, lived their values, and continues to do it. That also means that the leaders are meeting their employees where they're at, and they value progress over perfection.
I mean, I'm just like, I'm sitting with that,
Yeah,
right?
you're probably taking it all in.
Self-proclaimed perfectionist, Tim can attest to this. I've been working on it for like the last, I don't even know how many years, right? Like that is something that I had to realize too, right? That from a standpoint, not only for myself, I no longer need to be perfect and everything doesn't have to be perfect, but those that are around me, like honoring the progress of that is something that I think many people have to kind of sit with and make that agreement with themselves, right? That progress over perfection is success. It is moving forward. It is growth, all of those things. And I'm sorry, I was just like sitting with that for
Yeah, no, I saw your wheels turning.
You're like,
Yes.
your face changed. Cause I sit with that all the time. Cause I'm like, okay, we made progress today. Yay. Versus
Same.
perfect. I need that to be right. Like that's growth in a person in general.
The way that you can think about that, first of all, I'm the same. I'm always joke around and people don't believe me. I'm such a recovering people pleaser. I just wanted everyone happy at one point.
Same.
Yeah, I mean, we should start a club.
We should.
So here's what I've done to get over it. First of all, I'm super flawed. So perfection doesn't even enter my mind, but the way I execute leads everyone around me to believe that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I've done for myself is I've broken out progress into micro details and micro chunks. I'm one of those people that loves a big, hairy goal. It's ridiculous. In fact, world peace. You should just name every one of my initiatives world peace. So what I've started to do was to funnel them and break them up and break them apart and set my own measurement. So I don't love doing that because I like the big goals, like I've said, but I also don't like failing. And I feel like I fail if I can't accomplish them all at once. So I break them into more digestible chunks because that's the only way I know how to do it. And that has been what's working for me lately. Check back in a month. It may not be the same.
Okay. Yes. We'll start our club. It'll be your own version of
progress over perfection. So
yeah.
I think I've told Amanda this story, but years ago I was speaking to someone. Actually, I was interviewing someone. He was a few years older than me, probably, 15, 20 years older than me. And he said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Do you mind?" So this gets to your bravery comment.
Right.
I said, "What's that?" He says, "I get the sense you're a perfectionist." And I was in my late 30s, and I said that I was, with some level of pride, actually. And he said, "How does that work out for you?" I said, "Well, it's kind of tough." He said, "Well, can I just make an observation that there's only one perfect being, that's God, and you're not him? So maybe you can give yourself a little slack."
So where's your grace, right?
And I was like, wow, okay, that's pretty spot on. All right, I got it. Yeah, maybe I will cut myself a little slack going forward. But
no, you bring up a really good point, Tim, because the thing is, we all have an inner dialogue. And how we talk to ourselves matters. It really does.
Huge, 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 huge. Yeah.
That's also a tip I would tell people out there listening. Give yourself a goal of speaking nice to yourself. I have embarrassed myself time and time again. I go on podcasts. I think I have no shame at this point, where I will tell people that one of my biggest insecurities is around the way I look. So I, every morning, make it a goal to compliment myself, and it is super uncomfortable. But I'm starting to believe it from time to time. I mean, it works. It really does, because it becomes part of your truth.
Yeah, we're the only ones that can control our inner dialogue. No one else can tell our story to ourselves better than we can. So I learned that a long time ago. Might as well tell yourself a good story about yourself.
Well, and only you know what you're carrying. And I think that's really important. And this is one of the things that I alluded to earlier, and I know I've mentioned on previous podcasts, and it sits with me. I kid you not, I think about it often, is the fact that we carry those relationships, managerial, leadership, employee to employee, all the experiences that you've had up until this point, up until this very day in your professional life. So we're going to keep it professional here, but in your professional life, you will carry those for up to 15 years. But you're the only one that's with you every day of those 15 years. Yes. So you have the ability to change that dialogue, to have control over it. But I think something that's really important to lean into is that when you are leading individuals, are, collaborating, even if it's just a pure collaboration, you maybe have a dotted line, you maybe don't have a line at all to this person that you're interacting with, you cannot know or see what, and I'm going to put air quotes around the baggage that they're carrying with them from their previous experiences. So being kind to yourself and also showing that care and being kind to the person that's sitting across from you or in the room with you, or however you want to say that, because you don't know unless you open that dialogue and open that door to invite them into a conversation. And I think that's really important. And maybe you can expand on the research you've done and how that shaped that sense of belonging and how people truly find their right fit.
Yeah. I mean, leadership is a huge, huge responsibility. I don't think people understand leadership is either harmful or healing. It's very rarely neutral.
Mm-hmm.
We do carry with us past managers, up to 5, usually, up to 15 years. It's not exact science, but I have yet to be proven wrong on the data. So when it's good, we carry the good. When it's bad, we carry the bad. Unfortunately, we carry the bad more than the good. Think about it this way. Every interaction leaves residue. People don't remember every metric you hit. They don't remember when you wore the prettiest outfits to work, but they remember how they felt in your presence. It's that simple. So as an employee out there, one of the best things you can do is call on your courage using vulnerability. This is, Amanda, I'm so glad we're talking today. I want to tell you, starting this relationship or even in the middle of the relationship or when a relationship's going south, this is what I liked with my last couple managers. This is what frustrates me. And then opening it back up for dialogue. What do you like that employees do? How do you like to work? How do you like to communicate? I have one rule or boundary I set for myself that if I am going back and forth on Slack or email more than X amount of times, I take it off immediately. I'm the first person to read into every Slack you've ever written.
Yeah.
Or when you don't write, I'm like, oh my God, she's ignoring me. What did I do? Classic overthinker. So make sure you set boundaries for yourselves, but that you also make those clear to others, as well as communication style and what's expected, what you're expecting and what they should expect from you. So I think that goes a long way in understanding what your employees' baggage that they're carrying without being intrusive. You don't need to know their blood type, how many siblings they had, but you need to know what makes them tick. And by the way, you should want to make good on that, right? So that could be something as easy as, I have a person on my team who's phenomenal at communications. He also happens to be a great graphic artist. It's not in his job description. But guess what? It lights him up. So when we have more graphical type of presentations, he's the guy. It's the way it is. The other side, I have a female on my team that really loves editing. That's our woman. So, you just make it work with what you have. But at the same time, it's a lot about listening, understanding, and really diving into the more difficult conversations.
So when you think about belonging in the workplace, and you've spoken to this, Dr. Beth,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of the responsibility to leader is? What's the responsibility of the employee?
Love that. I think it depends on what your job is probably the easiest answer. But I think you have to balance your mental stability. And I think that's the responsibility of the employee. How much can I do versus what will not break me in the process? And to me, that means being myself. Now, you always hear that expression, bring your authentic selves to work. I'm not the person that's going to tell you that. I'm going to tell you to bring your best self to work. And so when you're making that reconciliation is what is my best self without sacrificing who I am to do it. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Well, and so 2 things can be true. So we've talked to you about this a lot. Like it's oftentimes, you kind of, you put yourself into, okay, this is the truth and it only is A.
Yes.
But oftentimes it's a combination of A, B, C, and D, or some, marriage between that. And I think that that mindset in leadership is really important. And you've done some research around what that looks like, how that impacts the sense of belonging that an individual feels as part of the organization, how those that are interacting with them ultimately in a leadership capacity are able to, I think, step more into growth versus not. What have you found when it's that yes and or that 2 things can be true at the same time?
So I love the whole movement around 2 things can be true. I think it's spot on. If you have either or thinking, it's going to flatten nuance. But both and thinking expands possibility. That's the bottom line. So you can hold people accountable and lead with compassion, right? Not rocket science, but absolutely true. You can drive results and prioritize well-being. So part of me as a leader loves that. That's a challenge. That's a challenge I'll gladly accept. You can be decisive and transparent, and especially about uncertainty. That's another thing. Call on that vulnerability. I heard this message. I was really worried about how that would land because I kept thinking of X, Y, and Z. This is what I did about it, and this is how I think it applies to all of us. A whole lot of ands in that statement, right? I think the mindset that you need to adopt should make space for complexity. Because I think, not to be so deep in psychology, but complexity is where humans live. Very rare. I'm sure people don't come on your podcast and just be like, let me tell you about my easy life and easy job. That'd be great. Truly.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Nothing challenging happened.
No, never.
Whatsoever.
Of course. So easy. Yeah.
No, I was literally like walking to the elevator, and it was one of those moments where I'd been in meetings, on calls, all the things as soon as I walked in the door, and had been like 4.5 hours. And I'm like, I have to walk away. I have to go see sunlight. I need to walk outside. Yes. Two things can be true. Yes, I needed to do that. And there's someone who stopped me at the elevator who needed me in that moment, right? So I addressed that person and I said, cool, do you want to ride down with me? Because I need to see the sun. And then we can have this conversation. It's totally okay to make space for my brain could not operate in the complexity zone that person needed me to at that moment. So I just shifted our environment.
So what you did is super cool and interesting, though, to me, to be honest, because what you've just done is what leadership currency is all about. It's about currency is around the decisions you make. And what's even more important about that is every decision communicates value, my values. I need to go out in the sun because I need a break. I need to clear my head. This is what I need to invest in my well-being. I need to invest in not looking at all of you for like a hot minute or whatever it may be. So I think that's really important that people understand that their decisions are their currency in that sense, and really understanding what you communicate shows what you value.
Do you find in the research that you've done that the currency of your decisions carries more weight? And I'm asking this maybe in an odd way, but we kind of know the thing that makes people tick. Like some people are very driven economically. Some people are very driven politically. Some people are and I'm saying that in a sense of their influence, all those types of things. Are you finding, those things this is probably a yes and. Those things are true, but I think the decisions that you make in carrying out those decisions probably weighs a little bit.
Yeah.
Am I asking that in the right way? I don't know how to...
No, I know what you're saying. I think it's hard, and it depends on how seriously you take that leadership responsibility. I think when belonging is spent, in a sense, or saved, those moments can be very small feeling, but very large for other people.
Yeah.
So, I'm trying to give you some examples. Who gets invited to meetings and who doesn't? Who hears news from you? Who hears it from 5 people down line? Who gets direct feedback? Who gets silence? All of these things are super important. It's absolutely what the research tells us. And a lot of times it's about being intentional versus all the unintentional things we do or don't do. I think the unintentional stuff is scary because you don't know what consequences, minus belonging uncertainty, and we don't know what that is. Again, we're in a very trauma-informed workplace environment compared to maybe a few years ago, but the reality is it started way before then. COVID is just really what highlighted some of the things that we were all facing and going through with each other.
Well, and you said this a little bit ago, but we were all in a very common state. We were all in the same, air quotes, boat. And that is not true on a daily situation anymore. We're not all facing that larger complexity.
The shit is over.
Yeah, exactly. And I do think that we're missing something. This is me personally, right? I do feel like we as a collective culture, collective being, kind of missing that element of togetherness that provided. Again, that was not a wonderful situation in any way, shape, or form. I do not wish that we ever have to go through it again. But there was a coming together that we had not seen in many, many years. And I think that that's something that we've gotten away from, the sharedness of it. And that's impacting our ability, I think, to create that weight in those decisions that we're making. And that's professionally and relationally.
Absolutely. I think you brought up something and it triggered something for me where I don't even know if we're in the same boat, but we're in the same storm. And I think the difference is that everyone has different ways of coping. They have different, some people are riding in yachts and some people are in canoes.
Yes.
And I think that's where I'd like to see the shift, where people really think about what that complexity may look like and come together. I mean, this is the thing. Unless we all realize that we're in it together, it's not going to change things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. So if I'm a leader sitting here and I'm thinking about the decisions that I'm making and using that as the currency that I have, like, what are some of those kind of pointed questions that you would encourage someone to ask themselves to say, are they using that? And again, I'm going back to the fact that people carry their leader and managerial experiences.
Yes.
You said up to 5 for like 15 years. And we oftentimes carry the more negative or the bad longer or more heavy. How would you ask somebody who wants to make sure that they're, in the right space, the right mindset to be a good leader in that way and kind of be on that positive trend? What are some questions you would have that person ask themselves?
I love this because usually I will say things like, you want to meet them where they're at and you want to know their schedule and you want to know this. I'm going to actually suggest something completely different. What I'm going to do is challenge you to say, can I replace my assumptions with invitation? So that may mean going even a layer deeper. Just like I carry my experiences with my past leaders, so does my manager. They may assume that the way they like to be led is the same actually as other people. So I would ask you to challenge yourself by replacing assumption with invitation, by asking questions like, what do you need to be your best? Instead of assuming it's money, which by the way, always good, but money or a title or the worst, a project, right? So what do you need to be your best? I would probably put some care pulse checks in there, right? Not about deliverables, just about them. And I probably wouldn't lead with, how you doing? Because you're not necessarily getting the right answer. It might feel like that conversation where you see a friend and you just say, I'm fine, to get out of the conversation. Same thing happens with employees. So I would really ask about them in different ways. I'd find some creativity. I have, I think, a checklist out there somewhere around this. Instead of asking how they are, maybe lead with, hey, I was just looking at LinkedIn and I saw you were an engineer by trade. That's what you went to school for. And now you're a graphic designer. How'd that happen? Like, you learned so much about people by just listening and giving them that space to invite you in, truthfully.
When you bring up the LinkedIn comment, and I think that's really important. And I know that I lean into this quite often, but it's not that you're being overly informed, but that you at least keep 1 or 2 nuggets about the people. And we have a lot of people. So we'll talk about our day life, but there's a lot of people to remember kids' names and all the things, right? But it's like, if I can remember 1 or 2 things that are meaningful to that person and ask them about that versus how are you doing, the value in that conversation, like talk about currency, you are building up your relational tank with them, or what I like to call your bank account that you can take deposits from later if you need to. Hopefully you're always, or take withdrawal. Hopefully you're always putting deposits in there. You can just feel it go up and up and up and up and up, right? In that conversation versus the, how are you doing? How was your weekend?
Yes.
It's more like, oh, I know you were going to such and such concert. Like, I just had this conversation with somebody who's sitting out there outside my office. I was like, I feel like you just traveled for a concert, right? And like, I'm being vulnerable because I'm not exactly sure when they traveled, but I'm pretty sure I remember that. And they're like, oh yeah, I went to see such and such band and we were 1, 2, and 3, right? And I went with my friend and like all these things. And I learned so much about that. And it wasn't like it was this 15-minute long conversation. It was kind of a pass by, but it was more than, hey, how are you? It was, how was that concert you went to?
You led with care.
Exactly. It just builds and builds and builds. And so if you ever do have to take a withdrawal, it comes a little bit easier.
Exactly. And you're not completely depleted. I talk to people about this often. It's something that people don't like to hear when I say, I'm always like, put it on your calendar. And I know that people don't like it because it feels disingenuous, but you're leading from care.
Yes.
Okay. So that may mean you've got a one-on-one with Amanda. Make sure you bring up these 3 points. It feels so hokey. It feels so bad and weird at first. Guess what? It's easy because you remember details, or if you don't, like you said, I know you just went to a concert, didn't you? You remembered something about them, and that does huge for filling that bank, truthfully.
Yeah.
It really does. And not just for them, but for you too.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point because I know you talk about like people don't want to hear put things on your calendar.
Yes.
One of the things that I would encourage those that are, if you have a weekly leadership team meeting or whatever that looks like inside of your structure, that you have a designated person, or in our world, it's me. And it is, hey, don't forget such and such birthday is on Tuesday. If you looked at my calendar, you would be like, how in the world do you know what's going on? But because I do that, like you have a CRM, you have somewhere where you keep all of that, like hobbies and interests and kids' names and spouses' names. And you would be amazed the times that we use Teams instead of Slack, but that like Teams me and they're like, so who has this person? And what does this person, like we're working on a golf opportunity, right? Like, does this person play golf or does this person just like to go to golf? Does this person like to ride in a cart or does this person actually play? Like all of those small details mean a lot when you can go but you've got to keep that somewhere. Like you're not going to have the mind of an elephant. No one's expecting that of you. And I'm sitting over here, Tim's laughing at me because I do remember a lot of things. Yeah. But I can't remember everything.
Much more than me.
Yeah.
I am the one that has to write it down, Doctor.
Yeah. But you have to have a place for that to know that so-and-so, their favorite color is blue. And so if we're going to send them flowers to acknowledge a great job they did on our project, they should get blue hydrangeas.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it's these kinds of things. And they're like, oh my gosh, you remembered my favorite color is, if it's magenta or teal, you know what I mean? Like it's the small things that elevate that experience. And you've made this comment before. And of course, I've done a lot of reading and listening to you too, but there's a difference between inclusion and belonging. Completely. And I think that's really, really important for us to kind of maybe digest a little bit here on this podcast. Yeah. So can you go into that? Because that leads into what I'm saying, right? Like I can do small things along the way, but at the end of the day, belonging is...
Yes. Belonging is the innate desire of being part of something larger than yourself without sacrificing who you are.
Right.
And I always like to say that belonging and inclusion are sisters, not twins.
Yes.
They may feel similar, but inclusion is other people inviting you in, and belonging is only something you can determine for yourself. Yeah. I get challenged on that a lot. It's probably one of my favorite things to be challenged on. Because people will debate with me that belonging is systemic. It's really inclusion that's systemic, whether or not we are invited into something. I can completely be in a room full of people and feel even more lonely. So just because I was invited does not mean that. I'm a senior right now, and I always like to think, I know where he wants to go to school. He fully feels like he belongs there. Whether or not he goes to the school or not is inclusion. Think about it this way. Let's just say he is a lifelong Tar Heel, okay? And he loves it and loves it and loves it. He applies and he doesn't get in. He may not feel like any less that he belongs. Let's say he reapplies and he gets in. Does that mean he didn't belong the first time? No, it means he wasn't included. Completely different.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of my point. Like those small things that I can remember and invest in for people, like that can help that person have that, like somebody cares about me, because I do. Somebody cares about me deeply, and that can help, kind of move them in the direction of that sense of belonging. And I can invite them to every single thing and I can include them. But at the end of the day, like they have to decide this is the place for them. And we as leaders just have to continuously, as you said, like live out your values. Like you said what you were going to do and you did it. And I respect and honor that. And it could be big, it could be small, it could be, as you used the example earlier, you had a conversation with me and you're like, I'm going to work on inroads for you for a promotion. And knowing that that's not a guarantee in any way, shape, or form, but you had the conversation to say, I'm going to work on this and we're going to partner together. Yes. That would create a sense of this person really cares about me as a human and is going to work with me on how I can get there if it's not the right time versus I just got passed up or no one's had a conversation with me about a promotion in 8 years or whatever it is. But I know that you care enough to do that with me. That can push somebody into making that decision for themselves, which I think is really crucial.
Absolutely. And the more we share about these things, the less taboo they become. I'm going to give you a real story. I don't know if I've ever shared this one. Okay. So when I was a newer mom, and I want to say nursery school started, I would leave ridiculous reminders on my schedule. Ridiculous. And one time I was sharing my screen and one of them popped up and I was mortified. It was remember to brush Joshua's teeth. Interestingly enough, it popped up and I was so embarrassed. So embarrassed because who doesn't remember to brush their kids' teeth? Vulnerable. The person was like, I can't believe you forgot that. And I panicked. And he said, I forget all the time. And I feel like a terrible parent. And it reminded me we're in it together. By the way, true story, I leave that on every calendar I've ever had every single day because it reminds me it's okay to be vulnerable. Yeah.
That's really sweet.
And no teeth problems in my house, by the way. Yeah. No one was hurt with that one.
It's one of those things where I do that too, in a sense of you have to remember, and as for individuals who have children that are either whether they're in day school or nursery school or whatever, it's like today is 100th day of school. They have to dress up for this. They have pictures on this day, but don't worry, there's pizza Friday on this day. And then this, like if you don't have it somewhere, you do have to be, and my calendar is full of those things too. Now, granted, they're marked as free.
That's right.
But it does remind, it like keeps me accountable to that part of my life and who I am, and allows me to show up as as you said earlier, my best self, because I know that that's taken care of. Because if it's not, then I'm not going to feel like I'm able to be 100% here because my brain is like, I forgot X, Y, and Z in my child's life.
Which is a downward spiral.
Yeah, it is. And
I forgot one night
entire day.
Misbrushed teeth means I'm an awful, terrible parent. And like you just go down a rabbit hole in your own mind of all the things that could spiral out. So it's a reminder, at least for me, it's okay to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I mean, my son's 18 now, by the way. So
yeah.
You don't brush your teeth anymore, I bet.
That's exactly right.
He forgets to brush his teeth.
That's
but
right.
You don't.
Yes. He's probably somewhere out there being like, what is she doing? Yes.
What is she talking about me for?
I was talking about my teeth. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you care enough to check in on that too. And you mentioned earlier in a professional setting, like building in care kind of pulse checks. What does that look like in a very positive way in that manager-employee relationship that you've seen? Like, it's more than, I know we talked about some questions you can ask. It's more than, hey, how was your weekend? Or how are you? It's, diving and knowing those few things. But what are some really stellar managers doing that make sure that those pulse checks happen?
I always like to say, again, kill the assumptions, add the invitations in. So what that means is I may manage an organization, but I need to remember that everyone wants to be managed a little differently. Some people like to be praised one way, others like it written in the sky. Some people want a private note with detail. I have someone that I have led in the past, goes with me for every company, and he likes to be praised in a quiet way, but in a way that shows that I know exactly what it was, what the impact is, and why I'm praising him. So I would ask your employees, what does care mean to you? What does it mean to you? How do you like to be praised? How do you like to be given feedback? What does candor look like? Because we all have different definitions in our head. It's very rare to get the same definition. Again, I would challenge you to go ask any 5 people what belonging is. You'll get 50 different answers. Diversity might come up, inclusion might come up if you're lucky.
Yeah.
But everyone thinks just a little differently. In fact, you could say something, Tim could say the same thing, and I may have interpreted completely different.
Yeah. Well, and one thing, and I'm not sure that you and I have chatted about this before, but in having that conversation and kind of being vulnerable, a lot of people take I'm going to say the reschedule as a sense of that someone doesn't care, right? Like it happens so many times or whatever. And it kind of sits with me. Like I think about that anytime I have to move something. I'm like, okay, I need to explain why I'm doing this. And it's not because I do not care and don't want to have this conversation, but here is, again, the challenge I'm facing or the deadline that has come up or whatever that is. And I'm going to repurpose that time so then I can give you 100% of me at a different time. So I am not sitting in a space where you're only getting half of me. And I think that's really important because that's one of the things that I've seen in my past experiences, right? Like one thing I've always appreciated is I get it. Things happen. We have to shift. And someone that we work with always says, improvise, adapt, overcome, right? There's really nothing that can't fit in that.
Right.
But the thing is that if you don't have to over explain, but I do think you need to honor the person and say, hey, this is why this is happening. I want to have this conversation, but I want you to have 100% of me in this conversation. So we need to shift this to 1, 2, and 3. And I think that's important because you talked earlier about like in a managerial relationship, making sure that you're communicating effectively, knowing that I don't think anybody would balk at you explaining why you're doing that versus just it getting moved or you not showing or whatever that looks like. Because that's a daily thing that happens. Things come up all the time.
One of the number one things that employees recite back to me is it makes them anxious when leaders change their one-on-ones, for example. I am a weekly one-on-one person. Very weird in the leadership world, but it's super important to me that I don't get to the 6-month mark in a performance review and people are surprised ever. Yeah. So I have weekly one-on-ones. And to your point, I had one employee that said to me, it makes me extremely anxious when you move things around. And I said, no promises, but I will make it my priority to not move yours around. And if I have to, you will get a reason why. You won't get an over explanation, but you'll get the exact reason why.
Yeah.
And I'll protect it as best I can.
Yeah. Well, and that's, again, going back to the concept of showing care, right? Yeah. Like that, I think, is a really easy way to show care. If you don't do anything else, like that's one small thing that you, I think, can do. Is there anything else that you would say, like, and give, kind of a more particular example of something that somebody could do, like starting tomorrow that would kind of increase that care bank? Do you have any suggestions?
I do. I'm always going to say, go back and ask what they liked about the last 5 leaders and what they didn't. And it doesn't matter where you are in the relationship. It doesn't.
Really?
Yeah, it doesn't. It's usually the starting point that gets people worked up. They don't know how to start the conversation. I promise you, once you start it, you may need to have another one-on-one to actually get to the work you want to talk about. The other thing, in that same vein, the advice I give to people is if you are a leader, do not create the agenda. Make sure that the person on the other end is coming to you and gives you 24 hours of what they want to speak about. And as a leader, you say, great, this is your time with me. Just leave me like 5 minutes, 10 minutes to do it.
Yeah.
It shows care. It shows, I know I may not be the easiest person to get, or my schedule may be jammed, but it's important to me that when we spend time together, it's what you need to accomplish. It's not about me as your leader, other than what I can do to remove interference for you.
Yeah.
Or to get you where you need to go.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Again, this was kind of like a deeper dive into the psychology around what belonging really looks like in a winning culture. What are some practical things that leaders that are assessing, how are they creating a brave space versus just a safe space for those that they're partnering with, all of those things kind of packaged in one thing. And I think that it really boils down to we all want to win, whatever winning looks like in that relationship or in that business or in that industry. But I really think that, you want to be a leader that people want to win with. And so if you can meet them where they are at, practice that care component, making sure that you're being just as vulnerable as you're asking them to be, that you'll be in a really solid place and feel like you're excelling in your leadership. And we're always learning, and definitely, care is not a perk in any way, shape, or form. It's like foundational, I think, to where a culture, and a culture can actually be relevant and people can get to that place of belonging again, then deciding that, no, this is the place for me. I really do belong here. This is the right fit. I think that's super important.
Yes, absolutely. I could not agree more. And, just hope that what people take away is that ability to feel like they could be themselves without sacrificing who they are, truly.
So if people want to learn more about your work, about your book, like where would you direct people to, and I'm going to say get in touch, but get in touch with you and your research? And I mean, I'm like going back to my notes from the Purpose Summit, and I literally could talk to you all day.
I love it.
So point being is like, how can people learn more from you, and where would you encourage them to go?
Thank you. And that makes my heart so happy, truthfully seeing that. So I appreciate it. I would say you can find me on Instagram, Dr. Beth Kaplan. You can find me on LinkedIn. I do a monthly newsletter. People love to interact with it, which also makes me super happy. There's drbethkaplan.com. So there's a lot of different ways. And hopefully I surprise you that I'm really happy to respond and really feel like it's an honor to hear people's lived experiences. So I appreciate it, truly.
That's awesome. Well, Tim and I are really thankful, that we got to interact with you at the Purpose Summit this year, that you were willing to be on the podcast and that you were able to share the time with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. And for all of you listening, we hope you'll continue along as we continue to share ways and this lovely how-to guide as you're trying to build a culture that wins, that remains relevant, ultimately that you're, braving the workplace, that you are continuously evolving as a leader. So we look forward to being with you next time.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Winning Through Culture.
Until next time, stay intentional, be impactful,
because your culture matters.